Hello, my name is Dr. Mutor Flood. Welcome, class, to an introduction to psychology. Today, we're going to learn about what psychology is and the major research perspectives of psychology. Psychology is defined as the science of behavior and mental processes. Psychologists attempt to understand two things. One is observable behavior, such as speech and physical movement. The second is mental processes, such as remembering and thinking, which cannot be directly observed. There are four major research perspectives in psychology. Two perspectives emphasize internal factors, and the other two perspectives emphasize external factors. These four perspectives are biological, cognitive, behavioral, and sociocultural. All four perspectives are complementary. They fit together like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle to give us the complete picture. No one perspective is better than another, as each one provides information on behavior and mental processing. The biological and cognitive emphasize internal factors. The biological perspective views our physiological hardware, especially the brain and nervous system, as the major determinants of behavior and mental processing. The cognitive perspective emphasizes how our mental processes, such as perception, memory, and problem solving, work and impact our behavior. An example of the biological perspective is there are many reasons why people get depressed. From a biological perspective, we would focus on deficiency of activity for certain chemicals in our nervous system as the cause of this disorder, and use antidepressant drugs to alleviate the disorder. A few weeks after starting to ingest the drugs, we feel better because mood is in part a function of brain chemistry. Biological psychologists also study the involvement of the various parts of the brain and nervous system on our behavior and mental processing. For instance, vision is actually processed in the back of our heads. Hence, we really do have eyes in the back of our heads, more precisely, the back of our brains. An example of the cognitive perspective is when explaining why people become depressed, cognitive psychologists would focus on reasons such as how people explain their successes and failures. If we blame ourselves for all of our setbacks, such as by making internal attributions, we might start to feel poorly about ourselves. However, if we realize the situation played a role in some of our setbacks, such as by making what are called external attributions, we might not feel so badly. Of course, it is important for students not to blame their academic failures on their teachers, because in so doing, they would fail to take personal responsibility for their lives. Many people report problems remembering other people's names. Often we claim it is because we have bad memories. But is that so? Or is it that we never bother to exert the mental energy required in the first place to encode other people's names? Both explanations may have validity, and such explanations would be of interest to a cognitive psychologist. Next are the behavioral and sociocultural perspectives, which emphasize external factors. The behavioral perspective explains that we behave as we do because of our past history of conditioning by our environment. The sociocultural perspective focuses on the impact of other people and culture on our behavior and mental processing. In the behavioral perspective, we have two types of conditioning. One is classical conditioning, which can explain how we learn fear and other emotional responses, taste aversions, and certain other behaviors. Second is operant conditioning, which involves the relationship between our behavior and its environmental consequences. An example of classical conditioning is when entering a department store, you may catch the scent of a perfume or a cologne of an old boyfriend or girlfriend and instantly be reminded of that person because during the relationship you came to associate the scent of that cologne or perfume with that person. An example of operant conditioning is if you ask a question in class and the teacher says, "What a stupid question." You are unlikely to ask questions in the future to avoid such an undesirable consequence. But if the teacher prefaces their response to the question with, "That's an interesting question," you may continue to ask questions in the future because of the desirable consequence of being implicitly told that you are smart. The last perspective is called the sociocultural perspective. Here is an example. In 1964, Kitty Genovese was brutally attacked and murdered while trying to enter her apartment building in New York City late one night. Many of the people living in the building heard her screams and cries for help, but no one called the police until after the attacker had killed her and fled more than 30 minutes later. Subsequently, researchers devised laboratory experiments that examined how particular variables influence people's decisions on whether or not to help each other. So, here is a review of the major research perspectives in psychology. The first is biological, how our physiology, especially the brain and nervous system, produces our behavior and mental processes, and how genetics and evolution have impacted our physiology. The second is cognitive, how our mental processes such as perception, memory, and problem solving work, and how they impact our behavior. The third is behavioral, how external environmental events condition our observable behavior. The fourth is sociocultural, how other people and the cultural context impact our behavior and mental processes. Thank you for your time. See you next class, and you have a great day.